Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The title of this talk today is Swiftboat, and I'll just introduce the idea and then go back to it and start all over again. If anybody remembers, Swiftboat is just a term meaning that they gave somebody the shafts, you know. I think that was the 2004 election when John Kerry was running for president. The Republicans, one of his strong suits was that he was a commander of a vessel in Vietnam War, from what I remember, and that's what he built part of what he built this thing on. And then he became one of the spokesmen for the Vietnam War. One of the things that he said, who wants to be the last guy to die in a war, you know what I mean? And so he's one of the ones that they threw their medals over the fence down there somewhere. And so the Republicans stuck it to him. They destroyed his character, although they came back later and tried to mend it. It was too late. So what that means is when somebody give you the shaft, they call it swiftboating now, you know. So he was swiftboated because that's what that thing was called. And I wanted to mention that because we're really living in a unique period right now. I mean, right today, this very minute. And so we want to constantly review ourselves, review our environment. Environmental and historical circumstances demand that you constantly review your environment and yourself and what you're doing, you know. And so that keeps you in touch with what we'll call reality. At least it'll be your reality or your organizational reality or your group reality. And since if you bounce it back between each other, at least there'll be a semblance of reality. Okay, now for us, we're right in the mix of this. It doesn't matter whether the other Muslims like Isna and Ikna, and literally everybody, whether they pretend like we don't exist, it don't make no difference, because we're right dead in the mix. In other words, they might have us by numbers 1,000 to 1, 10,000 to 1. I mean, they got people, but it don't make no difference because the part we're playing, we got a pretty good idea about where we're at in it. And just to remind ourselves, we gave a talk, what was it, Juma, about Suraya to the hills. That's a reality that Umar radiallahu anhu was giving a lecture, giving a khutbah, and in the middle of that lecture, he just moved out his hand and said, Suraya to the hills. Now I can imagine what the people looking at. In other words, the record shows that he did that. That's the historical record. Now I can imagine what the people, he's tripping, you know, something, you know. But then when they get back from Fars, they're discussing the battle and what have you. And the way it comes, man, we was in a pickle, I'm telling you. And then all of a sudden, Suraya shifted our position from one place to another, and that was it. Easy street from then on. And they said, well, when did y'all shift? So, well, we was in the battle, we didn't go have no Juma prayer, but so we was in the battle. It said it was during the Juma, probably at Juma time. And your commander was Sariah down there? Yes, it was. They said, well, Amir al-Mu'minun shouted out during the khutbah. Everybody was sitting, we was all sitting there listening. We didn't know what he was talking about. But y'all shifted. Are you sure? Would you go over that stuff and see if y'all shifted at that time? And they all, yeah, man, wasn't you in it? Yeah, sure it was. We did. So that shows you that there's some type of inspirational engineering going on between Allah and the human family that don't have nothing to do with revelation. Well, they got three types. One's in words, one is minwari, hijab. The other is it's kind of like in a flash, where you get inspiration in a flash. I mean, it may solve 10 or 15 years of things you've been thinking about. And it just hits you just like that. You say, man, that's deep. In your mind? Yeah. Okay. We all have that in some way or another. And then there's good visions, it's called good visions, or minwari hijab, from behind the veil. You ain't getting revelation, but there's some deep stuff happening. And so those are the first two stages. The prophets, peace be upon them all, get all of those. They get it in words. They get the Risala. Sometimes they get a Risala, a book, and sometimes they just get the words. But they get the message in words, a little different than us. And I want to mention that because during the khutbah, I might have mentioned that I just got a call from Iran that morning. I just got a call. And when I first got a call, split second, I was going to say, man, what you doing calling here? But I didn't. I said, this is Borna, I said, oh, it's good to hear from you. How's everything over there? And then we started talking about some specific stuff, and number one, I asked, well, what you doing now? Of course, I know what he's doing. He said, well, I'm a lecturer, and I go around, I'm working, I finished my master's degree, I do this, that, and another. And so he said, well, the ideas that you have to try to convince the people here, which he says he does, about what you're saying being the truth. He said this, he said, there, everything is manipulated. But here, that stuff is not manipulated. When the Parliament is saying something, and then the principalist is saying something, this is not, it may be a little coordination between inside of the group, but it's not like a design plan by the government. You see what I mean? What I mean is, we would go down and we would talk for several days about programs, thinking, you know what I'm saying, organization, structure. We would talk about that stuff all the time. And we would tell them how we had teach-ins in the past and how we, just to discuss it. Okay, one thing you could tell, that didn't nobody down there want to hear that. Nobody wanted to hear it. And most people would do step back and check it out and then mumble a few words and go on about their business. Okay. But everything that we would say, it worked out just like what we was talking about. That these demonstrations is going to go along for a while, then they're going to shut down. Okay, now they're still having a few down there, but that's because the overwhelming events that are going on in the United States. In other words, they have just continued to slaughter black people. And you can see the Israelism in it because they don't even want you to get mad by it. Right? They don't even, the way they put it, you don't even have a right to get mad and demonstrate. And then the demonstrations themselves. They say Portland has been going on for over 100 days. But they never make a clear distinction. Even Biden come out and said violence is bad, this, that, and other. But they don't say. Now, apparently these are the good demonstrators. Because the people have said publicly, we don't want any violence, we want to get our point across. And that's clear. You can see you can see it on TV, you can see it, but you don't hear it like specific over and over again. What you hear over and over again is this violence is getting out of hand, and they playing old Don up like, I call it Swiftboating, because when we left Juma here, right, and got back to the news, what we saw on the news, we saw Don has been Swiftboated. Swiftboated. Okay. With John Kerry is one thing, but Swiftboating for Don means what you've all heard in the news. Don said this about the soldiers. Don said the people in Belleau Wood, man, Belleau Wood in World War I, good God Almighty, that was a serious battle. Argonne Forest and Belleau Wood was about the worst thing they had going over there.
They were losers.
Right, yeah.
They were losers. All the people died in that one?
Well, it was about 17,000 or 1,700. 1,700. Marines died in that. Now, some of the other battles right there, one of the reasons he didn't want to go to the French, see, remember the 369 and 371 was over there. Black troops, they spent more time. See, the black troops, I don't want to stray from the subject, but the black troops in World War I, they spent more time in the trenches and they were more decorated than all American troops. But they didn't fight under the American flag. They fought under the French flag. They were just digging graves, and the French say, you gotta remember, the French and the British had been fighting from 1914 to 1917. The war ended in 1918. The American troops began to come over there in 1917. Everybody's tired over there. I mean, they tired. They did poison gas. By that time, they got trench warfare. You ain't going nowhere. All you do is sit there and bomb each other every day, and you just don't go nowhere. It ain't no flanking. It ain't no let's get out of here and shoot this one. They don't do none of that. So the most decorated troops was the African Americans in World War I. But the Croix de Guerre, they gave the whole troop the Croix de Guerre, and then they gave some individuals that's the highest medal the French got. They fought in French uniforms, they used French weapons, and they were buried by the thousands over there. Right?
He was talking about them.
Not only was he talking, he never mentioned them.
Right. He never mentioned it.
You know, no, sorry. but he wasn't going to get close to him.
Right.
It might even slip out. Well, you know, the ones that really fought here was the Negroes. And you know how bad the Americans treated them over there. And then they had music like how you gonna keep them down on the farm after they seen Paris? You know, this is after the World War. They had you thinking that was about white folks. No. How you gonna keep them niggas down on the farm when they seen Paris? And them white women loved them. Think of when you was growing up. Many of the mediocre jazz musicians and all of them, they went to Europe. Then they came back here big. They got all their stuff together. Why? Because the French loved them. And then places like, when I went to Europe, first got to Europe, over here we didn't have discos in those days, but they had discos over there where you played the music. Why? Because in every nightclub here, African Americans had 2 or 3 groups that was like 18 for the Temptations. You know what I mean? They wasn't as good as the Temptations, but you close your eyes and you would, right in every city. So we didn't need that type of, in our clubs, we had good singing all over the place. Back to the subject. When they said about Donald Trump, well, he done said that the people that went over there to fight and get killed were suckers and losers. That's his style of language. Then Fox News, his own folks, Fox News verified it. And then they got one guy that's a holdout, General Kelly. When he was standing at the graveside, General Kelly's son used to be his chief of staff. He said, why would they do that? What was in it for them? No, but look, okay, it does make no difference whether he said that. He said it for sure about John McCain.
Right, yeah.
Okay, he said that for sure about John McCain. So, if they made up the rest, it don't make no difference. If they made up that to drop it on to bring McCain in there, see, they didn't even invite him to McCain's funeral. And he talked about John McCain, and he talked about this General Kelly, like on TV yesterday, and General Kelly, he was a loser, man. He was all squeezed out and all used up, you know, and all of that. That's Swiftboat. So now, but you gotta remember, look at how they playing all of this. When I got the call from Iran, I was listening to what the brother was saying, and I was also paying attention to what we're getting ready to say. And all of them are in sync. So he's saying that it's hard for him to convince the people over there about what's going on here, because he lived here all his life, he was born here, but he's an Iranian citizen, his parents. So what he did was, well, what he said he does. First of all, he's on that other team. He invited me down to Texas and other places every year, 2-3 times a year, to give a lecture on Malcolm. In fact, I think MSJ, something other, for Muslims for justice.
Yeah.
or 2 Muslims or something like that. That's him and his partner. I got a call on his partner's line. On the phone, it had his friend's number down in Texas, but it says United States on my phone. So that means he called his friend, and then some kind of way they piped it. Anyway, I won't be able to give the whole history, but what I'm trying to say and build a story around is we're right in the middle of all of this. Not now, but we always have been. We're smack dab, up to date, you know. And what he called me about was what they was getting ready to do. What this reminds me of more than anything was when we was at the little Masjid around the corner, and the Merrill building was blown up in 1995, and they had arrested a Jordanian for it. You know, they arrested a Jordanian brother, Arab brother. They had him in jail. Then I gave the khutbah, and I said it wasn't Muslims did it, white folks did this. And I looked up the dates, something like April 19th. April 19th, that's the day you slaughtered the people in Waco down there. I think some kind of way I looked it up like that. And then, as soon as we came downstairs after Jumbo, you know, the news was on the radio, and they arrested Timothy McVeigh and all of that. And before that, I called the FBI. I said, look here, I got a tip for you. They got a tip line, right? So I got a tip for y'all. We don't want to hear it. I said, wait a minute. I guess my number was showing up and they had it. No, that's okay. No, thank you. I said, no, y'all got it. I heard it on TV. It's on the radio. It's on signs. It's called the tip line. And y'all want tips to what happened in the Merrill building down there. And I got a tip. And so, well, we don't want it, so I said it anyway. I said, it wasn't no Arabs did that, it was white folks did that. And then I said what I wanted to say, but they might have got the end of it. Probably it was on 2-3 lines, so they probably got it. I said, you killed children in Waco. You burned them up alive. I said, that Merrill building, it hit right near the nursery.